As the pale light of dawn begins to creep over the snow-covered grounds of Winterfell, the great hall lies quiet and still. The wind howls outside, but inside, all is calm, except for the warm, flickering hearths deep within the castle. Here, deep below the hall, the kitchens of Winterfell come to life with a slow, comforting rhythm. The kitchen is alive with activity, but not the frantic kind of chaos you might expect. Instead, there's a quiet, steady flow, a rhythmic hum of pots simmering, ovens crackling, and the soft clatter of wooden spoons against iron pots. The scent of fresh bread begins to rise from the ovens, filling the air with its rich, warm promise. The crackling of the fire blends with the sound of chopping knives as the cooks prepare for the day's work. This is where the heart of Winterfell beats, not in the grand halls or towering walls, but in the kitchens beneath, where the quiet, repetitive tasks of preparing meals for lords, ladies, and travelers are carried out with patient hands and steady hearts. Today, we'll take a slow journey through the kitchens of Winterfell, a journey where there is no rush, no battles, no courtly intrigues. Only the simple, steady rhythm of the kitchen staff, moving through their day from the first crackle of the fire to the final preparations for a feast in the great hall. With each step, each movement, and each sound, the work continues, a rhythm that is both calming and timeless. So settle in, and let the steady hum of Winterfell's kitchens carry you away into a peaceful, restful slumber. The first light of dawn seeps slowly through the small, high windows of Winterfell's kitchens, casting a soft, golden glow over the stone floors. Outside, the wind howls, carrying with it the chill of the north, but inside, the kitchens are warm, filled with the crackling sound of fires being stoked in the hearths. The air is thick with the comforting sense of wood smoke and the promise of fresh bread to come. A soft murmur breaks the silence as the first of the kitchen staff arrive. The cook, already awake, stirs the coals in the hearth with practiced hands, ensuring the flames grow higher. There's no rush in his movements, no hurried steps. It is as though the kitchen itself has its own rhythm, slow, deliberate, and comforting. Each action flows into the next, as predictable as the day itself. The cook stretches and yawns, his hands slightly stiff from the cold, but quickly warmed by the rising heat. He moves toward the spice rack, pulling down dried rosemary, thyme, and salt, each ingredient familiar and reliable. The first of the fresh herbs is waiting in a basket, placed neatly on the counter beside the chopping board. The smell of thyme fills the air as it's roughly chopped, and the soft sounds of metal on wood create a steady beat, filling the kitchen with purpose. Soon, the rest of the kitchen staff trickle in, a few scullery maids, their arms crossed against the morning chill, carrying baskets of vegetables, and a young baker, rubbing sleep from his eyes as he starts the day's bread dough. The atmosphere is calm and collected, a steady buzz of activity, but nothing too loud. The silence of Winterfell outside contrasts with the warmth of the kitchen, where firelight dances on the stone walls and the steady rhythm of work carries on. The bread dough is gently kneaded, the flour dusting the counter in a light mist, swirling in the air like tiny particles of magic. The baker hums a quiet tune to himself, his movements slow but precise as he works the dough into perfect loaves, pressing and folding with care. The sound of dough being worked becomes like a soft, comforting lullaby in the background, echoing softly across the kitchen. The cook checks on the large pots, the heavy iron cauldrons where stews and soups will slowly simmer for the day. The lid is lifted from one pot, releasing a cloud of steam. He stirs, making sure the meat is tender, the vegetables softened just right. The simmering broth releases a savory aroma that fills the kitchen and creeps into the hallway. Soon, the whole castle will smell of it, and it will be a warm, welcoming scent to those who wander in from the cold. Each task flows with ease, the sounds of spoons stirring, knives chopping, and fires crackling filling the air. There's no rush, no frantic pace. Each step is done with care, like a well-rehearsed song that's been played many times before. In this kitchen, there is peace in the repetition. The cook's hands move with certainty, the baker's rhythm is steady, and the scullery maids work quietly in the background, cleaning and chopping, their movements as slow and methodical as the work itself. The soft bubbling of the stews, the scent of roasting meat, and the rising steam from the ovens create a cocoon of warmth, drawing the staff closer as the day begins. The kitchen is the heart of Winterfell for today, and as the last of the light breaks over the landscape, the kitchen becomes the only place where time doesn't rush. Outside, the rest of Winterfell may be stirring, but here in the kitchen, there's only the steady, comforting rhythm of work, the kind of work that comes from a day meant to be lived slowly, one meal at a time. As the fire burns steadily in the hearths, the heat spreads slowly across the kitchen. The first sounds of the day have faded into the background, replaced by the steady rhythm of the kitchen workers moving between their tasks. The baker now places the freshly kneaded dough into a large, wooden bowl, covering it with a cloth to let it rise. He stands back, his hands wiping the flour from his apron, before walking over to assist the cook with the preparation of the stews. The cook is already pulling apart a leg of mutton, its rich, tender meat being placed into the large iron pot to simmer. He adds in the vegetables, carrots, onions, leeks, all freshly harvested from the root cellar, their earthy aroma filling the air. He stirs the broth slowly, the wooden spoon scraping gently against the sides of the cauldron. The sizzle and gentle bubbling of the meat and vegetables create a soft, comforting sound. It is a reminder of the long hours ahead, but the cook doesn't mind. His hands move steadily, without thought, as he prepares the meal for the day. A scullery maid steps forward with a basket of fresh herbs. She kneels by the fire and begins to chop them with precision. The sound of the knife against the wooden board is sharp but rhythmic, and the fragrance of thyme, rosemary, and sage wafts up, mingling with the simmering broth. The kitchen feels warmer, not just from the fires, but from the sense of quiet purpose that fills every corner of the space. The cook adds the herbs to the stew, a handful of salt, and a few dashes of pepper, letting the flavors come together. There is no rush, no need to hurry. He knows the meal will take hours to reach perfection, but he doesn't mind. It's the way it's always been. The work itself is its own reward. The morning passes in slow waves, as the bread dough begins to rise, and the cooks continue to prepare the meats and stews for the banquet. The air in the kitchen is thick with the rich smells of slow-cooked food. The heat from the hearths and ovens mingles with the scent of roasting meats, fresh bread, and herbs. It's the kind of atmosphere that invites long hours of work, but never demands too much. The kitchen is full of motion, but it's a peaceful kind of motion. In one corner of the kitchen, a pair of cooks begin to chop vegetables for the pies that will be served later in the evening. Their knives move swiftly, slicing through onions, carrots, and turnips with practiced ease. The sound of chopping is soft but steady, punctuated by the occasional thud of the wooden cutting board as it is set down gently. The pie crusts are rolled out, the dough pressed into deep tins, ready to be filled with savory mixtures of meats and vegetables. The soft chatter of the staff fills the kitchen, but it's all relaxed. There are no hurried orders, no frantic rush to get everything done. It is simply the work that must be done, and the kitchen staff approach it with quiet determination. Each person knows their role, their rhythm, and the task ahead. There is an unspoken understanding that the work is important, but it can be done in its own time, in its own way. The cook takes a moment to step back from his work, surveying the kitchen. The smell of the stews and roasting meats is now thick in the air. The ovens are full of bread, pies, and other delights that will soon be served to the lords and ladies of Winterfell. The kitchen is a hum of activity, but it's not chaotic. It's a carefully orchestrated dance of movement. Each staff member knowing exactly where they need to be and what they need to do. As the day begins to stretch on, the cook moves to the next task, preparing the pastries for the evening's dessert. He pulls out a tray of butter and begins to cut it into small pieces before incorporating it into the dough. The sound of the rolling pan against the wooden countertop fills the kitchen, steady and comforting. The soft, rhythmic thud of dough being rolled out is followed by the sound of the cook placing the filled pastries onto baking sheets. The oven is opened again, and the rich smell of butter and sugar fills the space. The morning drifts on, and the kitchen works in its slow, deliberate rhythm. The smell of food fills the air, the crackling of fire from the hearths offers a steady backdrop, and the kitchen staff move in harmony, each step taken in quiet precision. Outside, Winterfell may seem quiet and still, but here, beneath the great hall, life moves at its own gentle pace. As the hours slip by, the kitchen becomes a steady hum of quiet, repetitive motion. The fire in the hearth crackles steadily, sending gentle warmth across the room, while the oven continues its work, baking bread and pies, filling the air with comforting, familiar smells. The scullery maids now begin to wash the used pots and pans from the early preparation, their hands moving slowly but steadily in the warm water. The gentle sound of scrubbing fills the space, and the soft splashes of water are almost soothing. The cook moves between the stews, checking their progress, stirring gently to ensure the meat is tender and the vegetables cooked just right. He leans in close to the cauldron, inhaling the rich aroma of the broth. The ingredients have come together perfectly. There's a hint of rosemary, a pinch of thyme, and the savory warmth of slow-cooked meat. He smiles to himself, satisfied with the progress. A soft sound from the ovens catches his attention, and he moves over to check the bread. The loaves have risen perfectly, golden brown on the outside with a soft, warm interior. He gently taps the top of one loaf, hearing the hollow sound that signifies it's perfectly baked. With slow, careful movements, he takes each loaf out and places them on the counter to cool, where the scent of freshly baked bread lingers in the air. Nearby, the younger baker is finishing up the last of the pastry dough, rolling it out into neat circles for pies that will be served after the main meal. The dough rolls easily beneath his hands, the slight flour dusting the counter as the baker works. The rhythmic rolling sound of the pen against the wood becomes another peaceful part of the kitchen's soundtrack. The cook steps aside briefly to check the oven again. The roasts are progressing steadily. The aroma of roasting meat fills the room, a scent so rich and full that it almost feels like it's enveloping the entire kitchen. The meat sizzles as the cook bastes it, the fat dripping down onto the fire beneath. It crackles, sending small puffs of heat into the air. As the cook moves the meat around, he listens to the faint hiss of the heat and watches the golden brown skin crisping slowly. The slow roasted aroma is unmistakable, and the cook nods in satisfaction as he returns to his work. In the corner, a pair of scullery maids are prepping the root vegetables. The carrots, parsnips, and turnips are carefully peeled and chopped, ready to be added to the stew pots later in the day. The quiet, rhythmic sound of knives slicing through the vegetables adds another layer to the kitchen's symphony of sounds. Each slice is met with a small thud as the vegetable hits the cutting board, followed by the soft scraping of the knife against the surface. The kitchen continues to fill with the sights and sounds of the morning's work. The low hum of the fire, the soft bubbling of stews and broths, the quiet chatter of staff who speak only when necessary, and the sound of the bakery oven's door opening and closing as pastries are removed or checked. As the cook stirs the simmering stew again, his hand moving effortlessly through the familiar motions, he reflects on the work ahead. The meal must be ready by evening, when the hall will be filled with the lords, ladies, and guests of Winterfell, all gathered for the evening's feast. There's no rush in the kitchen, but the anticipation of the evening's meal always looms, quietly, steadily. The clock ticks on, and there's a peaceful calm in the air. The slow, comforting rhythm of the kitchen's work continues, steady and reassuring. The hum of the kitchen staff working together creates a quiet energy that fills the space, even as time seems to stretch on. The work is slow, but it is purposeful. Every dish, every loaf of bread, and every stewing pot is a small piece of the larger tapestry that will soon unfold in Winterfell's great hall. As the morning stretches on, the rhythm of the kitchen falls into an even steadier pace. The day has fully begun now, and the kitchens are warm with the combined heat of multiple hearths. The staff moves about with quiet purpose, each one fully immersed in their tasks, knowing that everything must be ready by evening, when the great hall will be filled with noble guests, soldiers, and travelers who will sit down to a hearty meal. The cook inspects the large roasting joints once more. The tender smell of meat roasting on the spit is starting to fill the kitchen more deeply. He runs his knife along the edges, checking for even cooking, and then bastes the meat with its own juices, ensuring the surface turns a rich, golden brown. The sound of the fat sizzling and dripping into the fire beneath adds a soft crackling to the air, mingling with the simmering sounds from the stew pots. Beside him, the baker slides the last of the loaves into the oven, the smell of fresh bread now more prevalent, making the kitchen feel cozier and more welcoming. The scent of rising dough and warm bread would soon spread throughout Winterfell's stone halls. The baker wipes his hands on his apron and stretches his back, a small smile crossing his face as he pulls the first batch of bread from the oven. Golden and crusty, the loaves give off an audible, satisfying crunch as the baker taps them gently. The scullery maids move in their own rhythm. They scrub down counters, gather the used pots and pans, and prepare fresh bowls for the ingredients that are still being chopped. Their steps are slow but deliberate, their tasks simple but vital to the process. The steady sound of water being poured into buckets, the soft clink of dishes being stacked, and the gentle scrub of sponges against metal resonate through the kitchen. There's a lull in the conversation, as everyone focuses on their work. The chatter of the morning has died down, and now the only sounds in the kitchen are those of the work itself. Vegetables being diced, water being splashed, bread being pulled from the ovens. The cook doesn't need to speak. He moves with ease between tasks, the rhythm of the kitchen directing him just as it directs the rest of the staff. He checks the pies that have been baking in the corner oven. Their golden, flaky crusts have risen perfectly, and the rich aroma of meat and herbs wafts out as he opens the door to check them. The pies are almost ready. A few more minutes, and they'll be perfect. The cook pats the oven door shut and moves on to the next task. At one of the stone counters, a young maid rolls out dough for the next batch of pastries. The sound of the rolling pin against the stone is gentle but steady. The dough, soft and pliable in her hands, forms perfectly round discs that will be filled with savory fillings. The work requires patience, and she carries it out with ease, having repeated the same motions for years. Each pastry, each pie, is crafted with care, even though the task is simple. The cook walks over to the large cauldrons, lifting their heavy lids to check the stews. He stirs them with a long wooden spoon, making sure everything is well seasoned, and adjusts the fire beneath them to maintain a slow simmer. The broth thickens just right, the meats tender and falling apart. The gentle bubbling of the stew becomes a steady background sound in the kitchen, a quiet reminder of the hours of care that have gone into it. As the morning edges toward midday, the pace in the kitchen remains slow but steady. The work continues without rush, and yet, there is an unspoken understanding between the cooks, the bakers, and the maids that the meal must be ready in time for the evening feast. There are no interruptions, no distractions. It is simply the comforting rhythm of work, the shared understanding that the meal must come together, one dish at a time, one slow, deliberate step after another. The kitchen smells of roasting meat, rising bread, and the slow simmering of hearty stews. Outside, the world is cold, and the wind howls across the snowy plains. But inside Winterfell's kitchens, there is warmth and peace, as the staff work together to prepare the meal that will nourish Winterfell's people. The fire in the hearth crackles softly, the bread rises in the ovens, and the stew bubbles quietly on the stove. Everything is as it should be. The morning has passed quietly, but as the sun climbs higher in the sky, the kitchen begins to buzz with a new energy. The fires in the hearths burn hotter now, the ovens and stoves working overtime as the kitchen staff prepare for the midday meal. The great hall will soon be filled with those breaking from their duties, and the scent of food will lure them in, hungry for the hearty meals that await. The cook stands by the hearth, carefully stirring a large pot of stew, his hands moving with practiced ease. The smell of simmering meat and vegetables fills the air, thick and savory, blending with the scent of freshly baked bread and roasting meats. The fire crackles gently, the warmth from the hearth now more than just a comfort. It's essential for the work at hand. The kitchen is now full of activity, but still there's no rush. Each cook, each maid, moves at their own pace, knowing their task and how it fits into the greater rhythm of the day. The baker checks on the loaves of bread, pulling the first batch from the oven with care. The bread has risen perfectly, its crust golden and crisp. He places the loaves on the cooling rack, and the smell of fresh bread immediately fills the room, making the kitchen feel even cozier. The bread will be served soon, sliced, and ready to accompany the hearty stews and roasts that are slowly coming to life. The baker begins kneading the next batch of dough, his hands working methodically. The steady, rhythmic press of dough beneath his hands adds a soft but comforting beat to the kitchen's soundscape. The scullery maids are moving quickly now, chopping vegetables, and washing the dirty pots that have been used throughout the morning. Their quiet chatter fills the air as they scrub down the surfaces, preparing the next round of work. The knife meets the chopping board with a sharp thud, followed by the soft scrape as the maid moves the chopped vegetables into a waiting pot. The constant rhythm of slicing, chopping, and stirring becomes a lullaby of sorts, an undisturbed melody of work. Nearby, a young maid carefully places a roast on a large, heavy tray. The meat has been seasoned, slow roasted for hours, and now it's ready to be placed on a platter. She slides the tray from the oven with a practiced hand, the scent of the meat rich and mouth-watering. She sets it aside to rest, wiping her brow as she checks the other dishes in progress. A slow turn of the spit brings yet another roast to the fire, and the kitchen is filled with the low sizzle of fat dripping into the flame, the meat slowly turning a deep, golden brown. The cook checks the time, a quiet acknowledgement of the hours slipping by, and moves on to the next task. There's always something to do in the kitchen. The herbs need to be chopped for the sauces. The pies need to be carefully watched in the ovens. The simple, unhurried pace continues, but there's a sense that things are building now. The midday meal is coming, and soon the hall will be full of people. But still, there's no frantic rush. Every step is steady, every task calm and measured. In the far corner, the young maid working on the pies hums a soft tune to herself as she rolls out the dough. Her hands move expertly as she lines the crusts with the perfect amount of dough, her fingers pinching the edges neatly. The filling, ground meats, fresh herbs, and roasted vegetables, are placed inside each crust with care. The slow, deliberate action of forming the pies continues without hurry. The oven will take its time, the crusts baking gently to golden perfection. The cook pauses for a moment to survey the scene. The kitchen is full of warmth, of movement, of smells so rich and inviting that it's almost impossible to resist. The long day of work is in full swing now, and each cook, each maid, plays their part in the steady rhythm that carries them through. Outside, Winterfell is cold, the wind biting at the stone walls. But inside the kitchens, the fire crackles, the bread rises, the stews simmer, and the work continues. There's no need to rush. The rhythm of Winterfell's kitchens will carry them through another day, one meal at a time. The kitchen has become even busier as midday approaches, the air thick with the comforting smell of hearty food being prepared for the feast. The bakers are busy tending to the ovens, pulling out freshly baked loaves of bread, their crusts golden and crisp. The scent of roasting meats continues to fill the space, mingling with the earthy aroma of simmering stews. The fire in the hearth crackles softly, providing warmth against the cold of the outside world. The cook steps back from the large pot of stew, taking a moment to appreciate the rich, savory smell that fills the air. He stirs the broth once more, watching as the vegetables and meat continue to soften, the flavors slowly melding together. It is a simple dish, but there's a beauty in the slow, methodical way it's prepared. There is no rush, no haste. The cook knows that the meal will be ready when it's ready. Time is not his enemy, it's his companion. The scullery maids work steadily, their hands moving with practiced ease as they prepare more vegetables and clean the kitchen's many pots and pans. The rhythmic sound of knives chopping vegetables and the soft clink of dishes being stacked in the wash basin fills the space. They talk in low voices, exchanging quiet words as they go about their tasks, their movements almost like a dance. Their role may be simple, but it's essential. Without them, the kitchen would grind to a halt. One of the maids lifts a large pot of boiling water from the stove, her hands steady as she carefully pours it into another pot. The sound of the water sloshing is followed by the quiet hiss as steam rises from the surface. She wipes the sweat from her brow, unbothered by the heat of the kitchen. The warmth feels comforting now, familiar. There's no greater reward than knowing that the meal will be ready in time for the evening's feast, and that she's played her part in making that happen. The baker moves between the ovens, checking the loaves of bread as they rise. He opens the oven door to inspect them, the warm air rushing out with the satisfying aroma of freshly baked bread. The loaves have risen perfectly, golden brown and ready to be served. He slides them onto cooling racks, taking a moment to wipe his hands on his apron before moving on to the next task. Across the room, the cook checks on the roasts that have been slowly turning on the spit. The crackling sound of the fire is now more pronounced as the fat from the meat drips down, sizzling against the flames. The rich aroma of roasted meat fills the kitchen, making everyone's mouth water. The cook pulls the meat from the fire and slices a small piece, tasting it to ensure the seasoning is just right. Satisfied, he places the roast on a platter, preparing it for the great hall. The kitchen is now a warm, bustling hub of activity. The scents of simmering stews, roasting meats, and freshly baked bread fill the air, wrapping around the workers like a comforting blanket. The steady rhythm of work continues, the slow, predictable pace creating a sense of calm amid the steady bustle. There's a shared understanding between the kitchen staff. They are all working toward the same goal, each contributing their part to the larger effort. The last of the pies are placed in the ovens, the rich filling of meat and vegetables bubbling gently beneath the golden crusts. The baker adjusts the temperature, ensuring they bake slowly and evenly. The kitchen smells of sweet and savory pastries, adding to the comforting mix of scents that have now taken over the space. As the cook surveys the kitchen, he feels a deep sense of satisfaction. The work is coming together perfectly. The roasts are ready, the stews are simmering, the bread is baked, and the pies are on their way to perfection. There is no chaos in the kitchen, just the steady hum of work, the quiet, rhythmic sounds of the kitchen staff moving in harmony. Outside, the world remains cold and silent. The snow continues to fall, blanketing Winterfell in a thick layer of white. But inside the kitchen, there's warmth, there's food. And as the kitchen staff move from one task to another, the meal they are preparing begins to take shape, slowly, methodically, with the knowledge that every dish prepared will be one more step toward the evening's feast. The hours stretch on, and the midday sun filters weakly through the small windows of the kitchen, casting soft light across the stone floors. The kitchen is now alive with the hustle and bustle of final preparations for the feast. The air is thick with the aromas of simmering stews, roasting meats, and freshly baked bread. There's a comforting heat in the room from the ovens and the open hearths, and the staff moves steadily through their tasks, each one focused and methodical. The cook inspects the roast once again, his weathered hands deftly testing the meat for tenderness. Satisfied with the result, he gently carves a slice from one of the joints, setting it aside for the evening. The sound of the carving knife scraping against the meat echoes softly in the room, followed by the soft thud of the knife being set back onto the cutting board. There's no rush, only a steady focus on getting each dish perfect. Nearby, the baker checks the pastries in the oven. The golden brown crusts have risen beautifully, and the filling, rich with meat, vegetables, and herbs, is perfectly cooked. He gently slides each pie onto a large platter, placing them carefully on the countertop to cool. The faint scent of butter and pastry fills the air as he moves, adding another layer of warmth and comfort to the atmosphere. The scullery maids are now focused on gathering the last of the ingredients for the evening's meal: fresh herbs, more vegetables, and spices from the shelves. The sound of chopping and slicing fills the kitchen once again, accompanied by the rhythmic, soft clanking of utensils being placed into water for cleaning. The work is not hurried, but it is steady, and the air is full of the quiet energy that comes from a job well done. There is satisfaction in the simple repetition of it all. A quiet voice rises above the clatter. One of the scullery maids asks the cook if he wants the pies to be served hot, or if they should wait until the evening feast. The cook thinks for a moment, his hands busy as he checks the stew, and then nods. Hot, he replies softly. Everything should be ready for when the lords and ladies arrive. The warmth of the food will set the tone for the evening. There's no rush, no frantic movement. Every action taken is part of the larger rhythm, the quiet preparation for the feast ahead. The staff continues to move between the ovens, pots, and tables, each one tending to their task with quiet care. The kitchen has become a peaceful island in the heart of Winterfell, the noise of the world outside muffled by the thick stone walls. The cook moves toward the large table where the vegetables are being prepared. There are carrots, turnips, and onions laid out, their bright colors standing out against the muted stone of the counter. He picks up a sharp knife, and the soft sound of chopping fills the air. Each vegetable is sliced with precision and placed into a pot, ready to join the simmering stew. The repetitive motions are soothing, each chop, each stir, each slice done with calm, deliberate care. The young baker, now finished with the pies, moves toward the oven to check on the next batch of bread. The heat from the oven is a welcome comfort as he pulls the loaves out, their golden crust crisp and warm. He places the loaves on a large rack, allowing them to cool as the next batch is slid into bake. The steady, rhythmic work is almost meditative, the warmth of the bread filling the kitchen with the promise of a hearty meal to come. As the day continues to unfold, the pace of work in the kitchen remains steady, calm, and purposeful. The staff moves with practiced ease, each task blending into the next. The kitchen is now a whirl of sounds, the chopping of vegetables, the stirring of soups, the soft rustle of flour, and the gentle hum of a job well done. The kitchen staff are focused, but there is no tension in the air. The work will be completed in time, and when the meal is finally served, it will be the culmination of a steady, repetitive effort that has been unfolding for hours. The cook stands back for a moment, surveying the work done so far. The roasts are nearly ready, the pies are cooling, and the stews are rich and flavorful. He runs a hand through his hair, smiling quietly to himself. Everything is coming together. In this moment, he allows himself a moment of peace, a pause in the midst of the busy kitchen. The fire crackles softly, and the kitchen staff continues to work, the day continuing its slow, deliberate progress toward the evening's feast. As the afternoon wanes, the kitchen has settled into its final stages of preparation. The fires still crackle in the hearths, the loaves of bread are cooling, and the pies, golden and flaky, have been carefully arranged on trays. The rich aroma of roasted meats and simmering stews fills the air, mingling with the warmth of the kitchen and the comforting hum of work that is yet to cease. The cook stands in front of the stove, stirring a pot of stew that has been bubbling gently for hours. He takes a deep breath, inhaling the savory scents, beef, root vegetables, and the herbs he has carefully selected. The stew has been simmering slowly, and now, with just a few minutes left, it is perfectly tender. The vegetables have softened into the broth, infusing it with their flavors, and the meat practically falls apart at the touch of a spoon. He tastes it one last time, adjusting the seasoning, adding a pinch of salt, and a dash of pepper, before giving it one last stir. Nearby, the baker is finishing the last touches on the dessert pies. They have been carefully arranged on a large serving tray, their crust glistening with a thin layer of egg wash. The sweet scent of fruit and sugar wafts through the air, a gentle contrast to the hearty smells of meat and broth. He wipes his hands on his apron, steps back, and surveys the work. Everything is almost ready. The scullery maids are tidying up their stations, washing the last few pots and pans, and clearing the counters of flour and vegetable scraps. Their work is almost done, and they exchange quiet words with each other, their voices soft, their faces glowing with the satisfaction of a job well done. They've prepared the kitchen for the evening rush, and soon, they will join the rest of the staff in the great hall to assist with serving the meal. The cook looks around the kitchen one last time, taking in the sight of the meal coming together. The roasts, golden and sizzling, ready to be carved. The bread, fresh and warm, waiting to be sliced. The pies, perfectly baked, their crust still warm from the oven. The kitchen is filled with the quiet satisfaction of a job completed. Each task, no matter how small, playing its part in the larger picture. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows through the narrow kitchen windows, the staff prepares to bring the meal up to the great hall. The last of the dishes are gathered, the meats are sliced, and the bread is cut into thick, generous slices. The stew, now rich and hearty, is ladled into deep bowls. The kitchen has reached its final moments of calm before the bustle of the feast begins. The cook gives a final nod to his staff, silently acknowledging their hard work. The fire in the hearth crackles as it begins to settle down for the night, but the warmth it provides still lingers in the kitchen. The bread has cooled, the meat has been carved, and the stews are ready. All that's left now is for the kitchen staff to bring the meal to the hall, where the lords, ladies, and guests of Winterfell will gather to enjoy the fruits of their labor. With one last glance at the kitchen, the cook walks toward the door, ready to head up to the great hall. The staff follows, one by one, their faces tired but content, the satisfaction of a well-prepared meal written across their features. The kitchen, quiet once again, is left behind, its warmth and smells lingering in the air, a reminder of the day's work. As the sun dips below the horizon, the kitchen begins to shift from the quiet rhythm of the day to the hurried energy of evening. The soft, golden light that filled the room earlier in the day is now replaced by the dim flicker of lanterns, casting long shadows on the stone walls. The fire crackles in the hearths, providing much-needed warmth against the growing chill of the night. The kitchen staff, now joined by several more hands, moves with purpose, each person aware of their role in preparing the evening's grand feast. The great hall will soon be filled with Winterfell's noble guests, lords, ladies, and guards, all coming together to share a meal. The work has shifted from quiet, steady preparation to a more urgent pace, but still, there's no panic. The kitchen runs on its own rhythm, calm in the face of the impending rush. The cook moves between the tables, his hands checking the final preparations. The roasts, golden and succulent, have been carved, and their meat is tender, juicy, ready to be placed on large serving platters. He tastes the stew one final time, ensuring it's seasoned perfectly, the flavors deep and rich. The aroma of the simmering broth fills the air, and he gives it a satisfied stir before nodding, signaling to the staff that it's ready to be ladled into bowls. One of the scullery maids begins to gather the freshly baked bread, cutting the loaves into thick, generous slices. The soft, crackling sound of the knife slicing through the bread mixes with the steady bustle of activity in the kitchen. The smell of fresh, warm bread wafts through the room, mingling with the savory scents of the stews and meats. Another maid carefully arranges the pies on a large platter, their golden crust still warm from the ovens. The sweet, buttery aroma fills the space, and she arranges them with care, making sure they look as pleasing as they taste. The pies, once a humble part of the meal, now stand as the star of the dessert course, their rich filling and flaky crust a perfect end to the feast. At the far side of the kitchen, a few helpers are tasked with bringing out the final garnish for the dishes, sprigs of herbs, slices of fruit, and vegetables arranged with purpose on each platter. Everything must be just right for the grand table. The staff works in sync, moving fluidly from one task to the next, their movements practiced and smooth. The young baker, now back at his station, places the last of the pastries into the oven, checking on the timing. The golden crusts of the pies and pastries already lined up on the countertop look almost too beautiful to eat, each one carefully crafted, the filling a perfect balance of sweet and savory. As the oven timer ticks down, the baker steps aside and grabs a few trays of roasted root vegetables, arranging them in neat rows on a serving tray. In the back of the kitchen, a large kettle of ale sits on the stove, gently warming. The kitchen staff works around it, checking on the barrels of wine that have been brought in, making sure that the drinks are ready to be served to accompany the feast. The final touches are applied to the dishes, with sauces being ladled over roasts, herbs added to the top of bread, and delicate garnishes placed with precision. The last of the pies come from the oven, their buttery crust golden, the sweet filling bubbling slightly at the edges. The tension in the kitchen starts to rise as the staff works faster, but still, there is no hurry. Everything is being done at its own pace, as it has always been done. The kitchen has its rhythm, and each person knows that no task is too big or small to be handled with care. As the last of the breads are sliced, the final platters of meat arranged, and the stews ladled into bowls, the atmosphere in the kitchen feels just as it always does, familiar, calm, and steady. The staff begins to move toward the great hall, bringing their carefully prepared dishes with them, their faces content, but weary from the long hours spent in the warm, smoky kitchen. The cook pauses, standing back and surveying the kitchen one last time before the meal is served. The once bustling room is now quiet, with the scent of roasted meats, baking bread, and simmering stews lingering in the air. The fire crackles gently in the hearth, and the warmth of the kitchen is comforting as the final preparations come to an end. It has been a long day of work, but the cook knows that it will all be worth it when the feast is finally laid out before Winterfell's noble guests. As the kitchen doors swing open, the staff begins to carry the dishes to the great hall, their movements swift but unhurried. The cook is one of the last to leave, double-checking that everything has been properly prepared, ensuring the last of the dishes are ready for their journey to the banquet tables. The kitchen, though full of the satisfying sense of freshly prepared meals, is beginning to empty, the space quieting down as the staff heads toward the hall. The cook nods to the baker, who's already moving with the others, baskets of bread in hand, and turns to check one last time on the warming trays for the soups. The gentle bubbling of the stews and the heat from the ovens fill the room with a comforting noise, a final chorus to the day's work. With the last of the dishes packed and covered, the staff makes their way through the stone corridors of Winterfell, carrying trays piled high with the fruits of their labor. The great hall, already aglow with torches and candles, begins to hum with activity. The sounds of guests arriving, the clinking of silverware, and the laughter of the lords and ladies preparing to sit down for the feast fill the space. The cook is among the last to enter, stepping into the great hall just as the first platters of food are placed on the long wooden tables. The flames from the massive hearths flicker and cast shadows on the stone walls, illuminating the faces of the guests gathered for the evening's meal. The sound of chairs scraping against the stone floor is drowned out by the mouth-watering aromas that now fill the hall: roasted meats, bubbling stews and freshly baked bread. He steps aside as servants begin to place the platters of roasted meats, pies, and bread on the table. The golden crust of the pastries shine in the flickering torchlight, their aroma filling the air and teasing the senses of the noble guests. Each dish is carefully arranged, from the rich, tender cuts of lamb and beef to the earthy vegetables that have been slow roasted to perfection. A server places the first bowl of stew in front of the Lord of Winterfell, and the cook watches as the guests begin to dig into the hearty meal, their faces lighting up with satisfaction. The cook, who has spent the entire day ensuring the success of the meal, finally allows himself a small smile. The work, though slow and steady, has paid off. The feast is a success. The guests, now seated at the long table, are served dish after dish. The stews are hearty and filling, the meat rich and tender. The pies, with their flaky crusts and savory fillings, are devoured quickly, while the bread is torn apart and eaten with relish. Each bite is savored, and the cook can hear the appreciative murmurs and satisfied sighs rising from the table. The food is not just sustenance, it is comfort, warmth, and a reflection of Winterfell itself, a place of simple, steady rhythms, of slow, hard work that comes together in a moment of satisfaction. The fire in the hearth crackles as the kitchen staff watches from the doorway, knowing their work has brought joy to those gathered in the hall. The laughter and chatter of the feast fills the air, and the staff, tired but proud, begin to clear the remaining dishes and prepare for the next course. The cook stands back, watching the scene unfold. The kitchen may be empty now, but its work lives on in every satisfied guest, every satisfied bite. There's no rush, no need for grandeur, just the simple, steady rhythm of a meal well prepared, a meal that tells the story of Winterfell, one of hard work, of patience, and of the quiet satisfaction that comes from the slow, steady effort of those who make it all happen. As the last course is served, and the guests settle in to enjoy the final moments of the feast, the kitchen falls into a peaceful quiet. The staff begins to clean the empty plates, wash the last of the pots, and prepare for another day of work tomorrow. The cycle will begin again, the work starting anew. But for tonight, the satisfaction of a job well done lingers in the air, the echoes of a meal shared in Winterfell's great hall. As the evening progresses and the guests in the great hall continue to enjoy their meal, the kitchen begins to quiet down. The once bustling space, filled with the sounds of clattering dishes and murmurs of the staff, now feels calm, almost serene. The fires still burn brightly in the hearths, casting a soft, flickering light on the stone walls. The rich smells of the evening's feast linger in the air, now mixed with the faint scent of wine and ale. The kitchen staff, having completed the final stages of the meal service, begin to clean up the remnants of the banquet. The scullery maids clear the tables, wiping down surfaces and putting away the last of the unused ingredients. The sound of damp cloths on the countertops is gentle, like the closing notes of a well-played song. The kitchen, once filled with the noise of work, now feels like a resting place, a pause after the flurry of activity. The cook walks slowly around the kitchen, taking a moment to appreciate the stillness. The pots and pans are stacked neatly, and the countertops are cleared. The remnants of the day's hard work are evident in the warmth that still radiates from the hearths and the lingering smells of roasting meat and baking bread. For a brief moment, the cook allows himself to sit down at the workbench, his hands resting in his lap. He looks out the small window at the darkened world beyond Winterfell's walls, and a quiet contentment settles over him. The evening has been a success. The work of the day is done, and for a moment, there is only the quiet of the kitchen, the steady burn of the fire, and the soft sounds of the staff finishing their tasks. The guests are well fed, and the kitchen has done its job. It's a job that may never be fully appreciated by those who enjoy the meal, but the cook knows that without the steady work of the kitchen staff, the feast would never have come together. It's a simple truth, one that is easy to overlook, but it's the heartbeat of Winterfell, a place that sustains itself on the quiet labor of those who work behind the scenes. The young baker moves toward the oven to remove the last of the pies, their golden crust still warm. He sets them on the counter with care, giving them a quick inspection. Though the guests have already had their fill, the dessert course still remains. The pies are left to cool slightly before being cut into generous slices, ready to be served with cream or fruit preserves. The soft hum of the bakery oven and the final flickers of the fire create a peaceful atmosphere, one that invites rest after a long day. The scullery maids now finish their work, their tired hands wiping down the last of the trays and utensils. They gather the soiled dishes and carefully stack them in the corner to be washed tomorrow. The kitchen is nearly spotless now, every surface clean and every dish put away. The soft sounds of water running in the large basin are the only noise left. Even the staff moves with a slower rhythm now, their work nearly done, the long day drawing to a close. Outside, Winterfell's great hall is alive with music, laughter, and conversation. But here in the kitchen, it is quiet, peaceful. The kitchen staff has done their part. They can now rest, knowing that their hard work has made the evening a success. Their tired hands will soon find comfort and rest, their bodies grateful for the warmth and food they've helped create. And the cycle will begin again tomorrow, as it always does. The cook stands up from his chair and stretches, his bones aching from the long hours of work. He takes one last look around the kitchen, his heart swelling with quiet pride. This space, this place of warmth and simplicity, is where the heart of Winterfell beats. Here, amidst the hearths and cauldrons, the meals are prepared that sustain the people of the north. And though he may never receive the praise or recognition of those who enjoy the fruits of his labor, the cook knows that his work is meaningful. It's not just about preparing food, it's about nourishing the spirit of Winterfell, one meal at a time. With a deep breath, the cook heads for the door, joining the rest of the staff. The great hall still hums with life, but here, in the kitchen, the work is done. It is time to rest. The fire will burn low in the hearth, and the kitchen will be still, waiting for another day's work to begin. But for now, the cook allows himself a moment of peace, knowing that Winterfell is nourished, and its heart is full. As the last of the kitchen staff finishes tidying up, the soft clink of utensils and the hum of the great hall's music can still be heard in the distance. The kitchen, once full of the sounds of cooking, now lies in a deep, restful quiet. The fire in the hearths is beginning to dwindle, casting soft, flickering shadows across the stone walls. The heat from the oven still lingers, but the kitchen is winding down, its work for the evening complete. The cook, now taking a slow, measured walk through the kitchen, runs his fingers over the worktops, the rough texture of the stone familiar under his hands. Everything has been cleaned and put away, the last scraps of food tidied up, and the heavy pot scrubbed. The soft glow of the dying fire gives the room a sense of calm, as though the kitchen is taking a breath, ready to begin again tomorrow. The staff begins to filter out, one by one, their faces tired but content. The baker, whose hands still carry the warmth of the oven, gives the cook a tired nod before heading toward the door. The scullery maids, too, move to the back of the kitchen, their tasks complete for the night. They speak in quiet tones, their voices barely audible against the quiet backdrop of the cooling hearth. The cook pauses for a moment, allowing himself to be still in the emptiness of the kitchen. The shadows from the fire grow longer, and a faint smell of herbs and roasting meat still lingers in the air, a testament to the day's work. The great hall is a world away now, full of laughter, food, and drink, but here, in the kitchen, the quiet is comforting. This is where the day began, and it is where it will end, in a peaceful, unspoken satisfaction. With a final look at the dining room, the cook steps toward the door, his boots echoing softly against the stone floor. He pauses as he reaches the threshold, his hand resting on the doorframe. The kitchen, now empty of people, still feels full of the effort, the labor, and the small moments that have made the day come together. It's the quiet rhythm of life here, where food is made with care, and where each meal is a simple but vital piece of something much greater than the kitchen itself. He steps out, closing the door softly behind him, leaving the kitchen to settle into its evening rest. The quiet of Winterfell's kitchens remains in the air, like the lingering scent of a meal long after the last bite has been taken. The cook knows the work is never truly finished. The kitchen, like Winterfell itself, will always be waiting, full of warmth and life, one meal, one quiet moment at a time. The night stretches on in Winterfell, and the great hall is alive with music, laughter, and the sounds of clanking goblets. But below, in the depths of Winterfell's kitchens, a different kind of quiet has settled. The bustle of the feast is faded, and the kitchen, which was once filled with the energy of a day's work, now feels still and calm. The last of the servants have left the great hall, and the kitchen staff has gathered their final dishes, leaving only the warmth of the hearths and the lingering sense of the meal behind. The cook stands at the hearth, his hands still warm from the day's work. The fires have been stoked again, their flames dancing in the dim light of the room, providing a soft glow in the otherwise darkened space. There is no rush anymore. The day's hard work is over, and the kitchen is finally still. The slow crackle of the fire fills the room with a sense of peace, and the cook allows himself a moment of reflection as he watches the flames dance. The table is cleared, the last remnants of bread crumbs swept away, and the large cauldrons, once brimming with hearty stews, now sit empty and cold. The smell of roasting meats and baked bread has been replaced by the faint aroma of herbs and a soft, lingering warmth. The quiet of the kitchen is almost reverent, a space where the labor of the day has come to an end, and the only thing left is the sense of satisfaction from a meal well prepared. The scullery maids move slowly around the room, cleaning the dishes and utensils used throughout the evening. The clink of plates, the soft scrape of sponges on metal, and the gentle rush of water filling the basins create a peaceful background sound. Each movement is deliberate and steady, the kitchen now calm and methodical. It's a quiet rhythm, a slow return to order after the flurry of activity that came before. The baker, too, finishes his task, wiping the last of the flour from his hands and placing the final tray of pastries on a cooling rack. His work has come to an end, but he lingers for a moment, gazing at the warmth still radiating from the ovens. The pies and bread that once filled the kitchen with their delicious scents are now gone, leaving only the quiet emptiness behind. Still, the soft hum of the oven's heat is comforting, a reminder that the kitchen will always be here, ready to start again. Outside, the wind howls as the snow continues to fall gently over Winterfell, but inside the kitchen, there is a sense of peace. The cook walks slowly to the long wooden counter, wiping his hands on his apron and taking a seat. The faint smell of the evening's feast still lingers in the air, but there is no need for him to do anything more. The meal is done, the guests are satisfied, and the work of the kitchen has been fulfilled. It's a quiet moment, one that's often overlooked in the bustle of preparing for the feast. But here, in the stillness of Winterfell's kitchens, there's a certain satisfaction in knowing that everything is as it should be. The warmth of the fire, the quiet sound of the staff finishing their work, and the lingering aromas of the meal create a sense of contentment. The cook leans back in his chair, eyes closed for a moment, letting the warmth of the hearth ease his muscles. He knows the kitchen will be ready for another day, another feast, another meal to prepare for the people of Winterfell. But for now, the work is done, and the kitchen rests, awaiting the quiet rhythm of tomorrow. The flickering firelight continues to dance in the hearth, its warm glow casting shadows on the stone walls of Winterfell's kitchens. The clatter of cleaning and the soft hum of the staff working steadily fill the room, yet there is a new calmness in the air now. The kitchen feels like a place of reflection, where the noise of the feast and the pressure of the day's work have faded away. Now, there's only the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. The cook, now sitting back against the stone wall, watches as the last of the dishes are washed and wiped. The scullery maids move fluidly, their motions slow but purposeful, as they clean the large pots and pans used to prepare the evening's feast. The soft splash of water in the wash basins and the rhythmic sound of sponges on metal create a tranquil melody that fills the otherwise still room. Every so often, the cook's eyes flicker to the crackling hearth, the warmth from the flames comforting against the chill creeping through the stone walls of Winterfell. One of the maids approaches him quietly, her footsteps soft on the stone floor. She offers him a cup of water, her face flushed from the heat of the kitchen. The cook takes it gratefully, the cool water a welcome relief from the warmth of the fire. He nods and thanks, his expression content but weary. There's no need for words. The satisfaction of the day's work, the fulfillment of nourishing Winterfell's people, is enough to leave the cook in a state of quiet peace. The work in the kitchen slows even further as the final tasks are completed. The last of the food scraps are cleared, and the scent of roasting meats and freshly baked bread, now fading, is replaced by the light fragrance of herbs and spices that still linger from earlier in the day. The hearth is the only source of light now, casting a soft golden glow on the staff as they move around the room, completing their work with quiet efficiency. The oven doors close with soft creaks, and the once bustling space is now full of gentle, almost reverent silence. The cook stands up slowly, stretching his arms above his head, feeling the weight of the long day in his joints. He takes one last look around the kitchen, everything in its place, everything clean and neatly stored. The heavy pots that had once been full of stew and broth are now empty, their surfaces polished and gleaming. The loaves of bread have been set aside to cool, their soft aroma is still lingering in the air, a reminder of the comfort they provided. The kitchen now feels like a resting place, a space that has completed its purpose, ready to begin again tomorrow. One of the kitchen staff, a young maid, moves quietly toward the door, casting one last glance back at the hearth before stepping out into the hall. The cook follows, his boots soft against the stone, and closes the door behind him. The warm glow of the kitchen is now a distant memory, but the feeling of contentment lingers in the stillness of the night. Outside, Winterfell remains cloaked in the cold of the north, the wind whipping through the trees and the snow falling gently on the courtyard. But inside, the hearths still burn, and the echoes of the evening feast, of laughter, of music, of shared meals, are just beginning to fade. The cook walks down the hallway, his pace slow and unhurried. He is content, knowing that his work has nourished those who now rest in the great hall, their bellies full and their hearts warm. Tomorrow, the kitchen will begin again, another day of preparation, of meals, of comfort. But for tonight, the kitchen is silent, the work done, and Winterfell's heart beats quietly, softly, until the next day's rhythm begins. The sounds of the kitchen have quieted almost entirely now, save for the occasional clink of a utensil being set down or the faint crackle of the dying embers in the hearths. The staff, having completed their work, move with a gentle, unhurried pace, finishing up the last of the cleanup. The stillness of the room is a comforting contrast to the earlier bustle of the day. The kitchen, for all its warmth and activity, has a calming effect once the work is done, as if it too can rest after its long labor. The cook, his tired limbs still sore from hours of standing and stirring, takes a slow walk around the kitchen. His gaze lingers on the countertops where, just hours ago, large pots of stew simmered and trays of roasted meat cooled. The now empty cauldrons sit patiently in their places, a reminder of the hard work that was once poured into filling them. The rich scent of roasted meats and simmering stews has dissipated, leaving only the faintest trace of warmth in the air. He moves to the hearth, taking a moment to lean against the stone, the heat still radiating gently from the embers. The flicker of the fire, although dimmer now, provides a sense of calm and reflection. The flames crackle softly, breaking the silence with their soothing rhythm. In these quiet moments, the cook feels a deep sense of satisfaction. The meal is over, the guests have been fed, and Winterfell's heart has been nourished, not just with food, but with the work of all who make it happen. The young baker, his face flushed and tired from a day of kneading dough and pulling trays from the oven, stands near the hearth, wiping his hands on his apron. He watches the cook for a moment, then gives a small smile before nodding in acknowledgement. There are no words needed. The bond between those who work in the kitchen is understood through the quiet camaraderie of their shared labor. The cook, sensing that the kitchen is fully settled, moves toward the back of the room where the scullery maids are finishing their last task of the evening, cleaning the heavy pots and dishes used in the feast. The soft clink of metal on stone fills the air as they scrub and rinse, the sound steady and familiar. The work is nearly done. The kitchen will be empty soon, save for the quiet warmth left behind by the fire. He walks slowly to the door and looks back one last time at the kitchen. The firelight flickers on the stone walls, casting shadows that seem to move with the rhythm of the flames. The warm glow of the hearth gives the room a peaceful, almost timeless feel. Here, where the work was done with such quiet diligence, there is nothing left to do but rest. The cook steps out of the kitchen and into the hallway, the cool air of Winterfell's stone walls greeting him. He can hear the distant sounds of music and laughter from the great hall, but here, in the quieter corridors of Winterfell, it feels as though time has slowed down, taking a breath before the next cycle of work begins. The kitchen staff will rest for tonight, but tomorrow it will all begin again. New ingredients, new dishes, new rhythms to follow. For now, though, the cook allows himself a moment of peace. He stands in the corridor, listening to the distant sounds of the castle, his mind content with the work of the day. The world outside may be cold, the winds may howl against the stone walls of Winterfell, but inside, there is warmth, there is quiet, there is satisfaction in knowing that the heart of the castle has been fed, that the work was done with care, and that tomorrow, the kitchen will again be ready. As the last of the evening's sounds fade into the background of Winterfell, the kitchen remains still. The once bustling space, filled with the hum of activity, is now serene, almost reverent. The fire in the hearth burns low, its gentle glow casting soft shadows across the stone walls. The scent of the feast, which had once filled every corner, has begun to fade, leaving behind only the comforting warmth of the embers and the faint traces of herbs, spices, and roasted meats. The cook stands by the hearth, his hands now clean and free of the grime of the day's work. The weight of the evening has settled into his bones, and although his body aches from hours of standing and moving, there is a quiet satisfaction in the stillness. The work is done, and the guests are sated, their bellies full and their spirits nourished. Winterfell, for a time, can rest. The cook takes a slow, deliberate breath, letting the calm of the moment wash over him. The quiet is broken only by the occasional soft rustle of the scullery maids finishing their final tasks, sweeping the floors and wiping down the counters. Their movements are slow now, deliberate but relaxed, as if they too can take a moment to reflect on the day's labor. The kitchen, now quiet and empty of food, feels like a sacred space, one that has served its purpose, providing nourishment and warmth to those who live in this ancient castle. The cook's eyes scan the room, his gaze lingering on the hearth, the stone walls, and the counters where, just hours ago, the kitchen staff had worked together in harmony, preparing each dish with care. The pots and pans that once held stews and roasts are now clean, waiting to be used again. The bread that had risen so perfectly now sits in baskets, its warm aroma lingering only in memory. The fire crackles softly, a final reminder of the work that has passed. The cook knows that tomorrow will bring another round of preparations, another feast to prepare, another day of work. But for tonight, there is only this quiet peace. There is a certain beauty in the stillness, in the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the kitchen has done its job, fulfilling its purpose in the grand rhythm of Winterfell's life. Outside, the cold wind howls across the snowy plains, but inside the kitchens, there is warmth. The hearths continue to glow, the light flickering in the dim room, casting a soft golden hue on everything it touches. The kitchen, though empty of people, is still full of life. Life in the form of the quiet, comforting aftermath of the feast. The sounds of the great hall are now distant, muffled by the thick stone walls of Winterfell. But inside the kitchen, there is only the steady burn of the fire, the quiet work of the staff, and the lingering sense of fulfillment from a day's hard work. The cook finally moves to the door, taking one last look around the kitchen before stepping out into the corridor. His steps are slow, his body weary but content. The day is done. Winterfell's heart has been fed, and the kitchen, with its warmth, its hearth, and its memories, will rest until the morning. As the cook steps into the hallway, the door to the kitchen closes softly behind him, and the quiet of the castle settles in for the night. The staff has done their part, and the kitchen is ready for tomorrow's work, whenever it may come. And so, the kitchen falls into silence. The last remnants of the day's work are tucked away, the hearth's flames burn low, and the lingering scents of the feast slowly fade into the stone walls of Winterfell. For now, the kitchen is at rest, its purpose fulfilled. The cooks, the bakers, the scullery maids, each one has played their part in ensuring that Winterfell's heart was nourished, not just with food, but with the quiet effort that goes into each meal, each moment of care, and each dish prepared. Outside, the cold winds of the north continue to howl against the castle's stone walls, but inside, there is warmth, there is peace, there is the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. Tomorrow, the kitchen will rise again. The fires will burn bright, the bread will rise, and the stews will simmer once more. The cycle of the kitchen's quiet rhythm will continue, always slow, always steady, providing sustenance for the people of Winterfell. But for tonight, everything pauses. The quiet of the kitchen is a moment of calm, of reflection, and of contentment. As the cook, the baker, and the staff all head to their rest, Winterfell's kitchens, though empty for now, hold the warmth and life that will be needed again when the day begins once more. As you drift off to sleep, let the steady rhythm of Winterfell's kitchen lull you into rest, knowing that the quiet work of the kitchen has filled the hearts of Winterfell's people, just as it will fill the days ahead. Rest easy, knowing that the steady hum of daily life continues, one meal at a time. Good night.